Hi there, my name is Kevin and welcome to my channel where we learn how to make the web and how to make it look good with weekly tips, tricks, and tutorials. In this week's video, we're going to be taking a look at feature queries. The idea behind feature queries is that we can use them to continue pushing CSS a little bit using some newer features that older browsers might not be able to support and create a fallback for those browsers. What I'm doing in this video is just giving you a good idea of how they work, how you can start setting them up and using them today in a really nice and simple way. You do not have to overcomplicate things. So we're going to be starting off by just looking at the basic syntax of them, how they work. What about browsers like Internet Explorer that don't even support feature queries? What happens then? So we're going to look at all of that. Then we're going to look at a page that I built for a navigation tutorial almost 3 years ago. It's kind of crazy. But back then I used ClipPath for the navigation. So I've resurrected that. I have changed a few things from the original code that I did back then, but I am going to include the link to that video also in the description. So if you want to see how I built out that whole page, you can check that link out. Because I use ClipPath in that video, which isn't supported by Internet Explorer or Edge, I want to look at how we can create a fallback for those and older versions of other browsers as well that make sure that it works across the board. And also stick around to the end because it is important to know that you don't always have to use feature queries as well. They're a nice tool to use when you sort of need almost like you need to remove some things that you did previously in the ones that do support it, which is what I do in this case. Because we actually have two conflicting properties for when I redo the clip path. Whereas when we're not doing that, in some cases, things just degrade gracefully, and that's fine too. So we're going to look at when you can get away with not actually using one. You can just use modern CSS, and it's not the end of the world if it doesn't work. So here we are ready to go, and now just to show you, I'm in Firefox here, and if I click here, you can see it's working nicely, and you just have to take my word for it, but in Chrome, it's also working out nicely. But let's say someone is on Edge, and they come to my website, they have this. And well, that sort of sucks, and they can't actually open, this is working, but the menu's obviously not coming and going. And let's go check out Internet Explorer as well. And as you can guess, it's not working in Internet Explorer. We're going to come down to here where I have the clip path. So you can see I've set up a clip path here, which is a circle that's at 0 pixels. And then when we click on it, the circle becomes 250%. So it's getting really, really, really big, and it pretty much takes over the screen and lets us see everything that's inside. The problem is ClipPath is not supported in Edge or in Internet Explorer. So what's happening in those cases is actually that the browser is, the ClipPath is pretty much hiding things. So because it's not hiding anything, that's why in the other browsers all the time we just get this big open view like that. And that's kind of crappy. What we're going to do is we're going to grab all of this. I'm going to keep it all, but I'm just going to throw it inside a comment for now. So it's not actually affecting our website at all. And we can, hang on to it a little bit for once we need it. And what I'm also going to do now is on here, I'm going to throw in a transform. We're going to do a translate on here, x of 100%, which should make it disappear off the screen. Now, to give you a little bit of an idea of how @supports works, is @supports looks for whether the browser can actually support that feature or not. The feature query is supported by Edge. So Edge, if it runs into a feature query, will check to see if that feature works. Internet Explorer, though, the feature query isn't even supported. So before we do anything else, I'm just going to do a quick one here. So it looks a lot like a media query. So it's @supports. Then you put your parentheses, and then in here you want to put what it supports, and you can't just put a property. You have to put a property value pair because it's going to check for both the property and the value that you've put, because it could be a property such as display. Well, every browser supports display, but maybe you want grid where not everything supports that type of thing. So you have to put both of them. If you just put one, it won't work. So just for fun, let's say display grid, and which Edge does support. And I'm going to say body. We're on here just for fun. We're going to say light blue on my background. So you can see that that light blue has come through. So let's open up Edge, and we should have the same thing there. There we go. We can see the light blue background is there because grid is supported. Now, while this is working here, you're going to notice that if we go over to Internet Explorer, it's not actually working here. Nothing's happening. And because the whole feature query is not supported at all in Internet Explorer, what happens is this whole thing just gets ignored as if it's not there. So in Internet Explorer's eyes, it just completely ignores that, which is perfect. It's sort of doing its job. Now, feature queries can go a lot more in depth. You can actually say supports and not things. So we could say if something does not support something like display grid, but you don't really want to do that because then you run into these issues like this, where with Internet Explorer, if it doesn't support the feature query, that, you know, you're sort of not really going to get it to work. But just to show you that this whole supports thing is actually working, let's just do one last change to our code, where I'm just going to set this up to be my clip path. So clip path, circle, and we'll just put 0 pixels in there. We just want to have some sort of valid property in there. Obviously, it's not going to be working here. If we go over to Edge, though, it's also not working here. So the background has gone back to the default, but if we go over to Firefox, the blue background is still working. So inside of this, we can write what we want. Now, what's really important is, a lot like media queries, if you're doing mobile first, you usually have your default stylings, and then this comes after. Because remember, if I have this all the way at the top, and I have it before that here, where I'm declaring my background color, well, this one's going to win. Because if it supports my clip path, it should be a light blue, but oh wait, everything should have this body. So this gets ignored because this one's coming second. So just like your media queries, you want to make sure they're coming after and not before things, because then it sort of defeats the entire purpose. Now, obviously, what we don't want to be bothering with here is changing the background color. What we want to be changing is all of this. We want to include all of this inside this right here. So we just have to put our dot site nav, and that should do it. So now, if we're on a site so now if somebody visits and they're on a browser that supports the clip path, we're going to see that it works, except there'll be one problem. It's not really working because our transform translate here. So I'm also going to have to come onto here and say transform translate x of 0. Just like that, so to make sure that it's actually on our screen and not hidden away. So now we've got this working in any browser that does actually support my clip path, but what do we do for the ones that don't? All we have to do is my site nav open, and I'll just do my transform translate x 0. So now on this one, we still have my clip path, but if we go on over to Edge, now here it is working. Now the only thing is it's clicking on and off. It's not actually transitioning very nicely, so we can also fix this. So here my transition is only for my clip path. We might as well steal this exact same transition, but in this case the transition will be on my transform, which would be more performant anyway. And my Edge is having a lot of trouble refreshing for some reason, so let's just pop that in there. There we go, and you can see that it is working there. And if we go over to Internet Explorer now, we can see that it's also working in Internet Explorer. So that's the basics of how you can use @supports or your feature queries to include features on a site, but still be able to not break your site. But one thing that's really important with these is you do not necessarily want to use it for everything. So as an example, last week, I took a look at scroll behavior smooth to add in this nice automatic smooth scrolling with CSS. Really awesome, but it's not supported by Edge or Internet Explorer. This doesn't have to have a feature query though, because if this doesn't work, it just doesn't work. So if I go and try this in Edge right now, all it's going to happen is it jumps from one section to the next anyway. So there's no real reason that I'd want to include that in there. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and I can't really build in some sort of fallback, at least not with CSS. At least not with CSS. So if it's something that if it just doesn't work, and it's going to sort of fall back gracefully like this, like it's not breaking your site, then you don't really need it. But in the example of the click path, I kind of needed it because if I didn't have a fallback for browsers that didn't support it, they literally couldn't use the site, and that's really problematic. And there you have it. As I said, that's not the biggest deep dive into feature queries there are, but if you do want to do a bit more reading on them, you can check out below. I've also done a video quite a while ago where I was using CSS Grid a lot. Actually, it wasn't a single video. It was a whole series on building out a portfolio site with Grid. So if you'd want to check that out, I used a lot of feature queries in that to bring in fallbacks for if the browser that you're using does not support Grid. So if you want to check out that series, you can check that out in the description, or there should be a card up there right now. Thank you very much for watching. A big thank you to my patrons for helping support me in everything I do here. If this is the first time that you're watching and you haven't yet subscribed, please consider subscribing. And of course, until next time, don't forget to make your corner of the internet just a little bit more awesome.